Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Very thrilled today to be joined by one of my favorite human beings in the world. This guy right here, Ezekiel Trezevant. He's my assistant beat writer covering the Raiders, and he's fantastic. Great husband, great father. He's a terrific friend, by the way. An awesome employee and journalist, and he's a guy I just genuinely love and care for. Zeke, how you doing, bud?
Doing well, Hondo. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Now, earlier this week was more OTAs. Don't want to imply or give the impression to anyone that I went. I did not. I had a surgical procedure and was unable to attend. So Zeke was there riding solo, not me being lazy. I wasn't on vacation. But Zeke, I want to dig in. I've talked to people, obviously talked to you, but I mean, I've talked to people within the organization and a couple of players and getting some feedback. But you were there on the ground. I want you to tell everyone what stood out to you as you were there on the sidelines watching OTAs this week.
Hands down, number one thing that stood out to me the most was Aiden O'Connell and how vocal he was when we saw him. It got to the point where me and a couple of the media members were talking, and then we heard a voice just kind of barking. And somebody said, "Is that Aiden?" We all kind of look around like, "Is that Aiden?" And it was like, "Yeah, that is Aiden." And the more you just watch, you can kind of see him with that command of the offense, even early on. So, and just making his voice heard. So, Aiden is taking. I've already noticed Aiden taking some steps in terms of leadership, being more vocal, being more seen, more heard around the team, and the team is responding to him.
So, Zeke, I want to read a couple things here. I've got several texts, and I'd like your thoughts on them because I like to get various opinions because if two people are seeing the same thing, then you can trust that maybe you're not just catching a glimpse.
Yeah.
So this is what I was told. Question: can you give me your thoughts on what you think of Aiden O'Connell so far? Quote: I've been so impressed. It doesn't mean I haven't been with Gardner, but Aiden almost isn't the same guy. I think he's grown up and I think he's embraced and loves the competition. Thoughts?
1,000% correct. And you asked me a couple of episodes ago in terms of Aiden, and I told you I feel like he was upset, right, about the talk that was around him, and I still stick to that. I think he was upset too, but in a positive way. It's motivating him. And I think what you read in terms of that text is fair to say. To a certain degree, he's not the same quarterback anymore. And again, I'm speaking right now in terms of how he's carrying himself. Not that he was carrying himself wrong last year, but it was more of I'm a rookie that's been thrown into the spotlight. Now it's more of, hey, I'm here. I've kind of proven myself. Now I need to go solidify myself here and let's move forward. So I agree with that text.
Okay, here's a text from somebody's part of the organization. I thought this was fascinating. I'd love your thoughts. Hondo, I want to share something with you. On your podcast this offseason, you have continually referenced how Aiden O'Connell at every level has had to compete. Nothing's been given. Although I heard you, I kind of minimized your opinion. Not that I don't respect you, but I thought maybe it was overplayed. Through these early OTAs, I was wrong. I think bringing in Gardner and the competition has made Aiden better. There is some dog in that guy. Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm trying not to get too excited because that's somewhat similar to what I told you a couple of weeks ago when I said, "Hey, he's got that dog in him. He's just quiet and he's unassuming, so you don't really see it." But with him, you can just kind of tell again how he's carrying himself. I will tell you this: he looks comfortable in being in a competition, right? It's not, oh, they brought in a veteran and no, it's almost like he looks a little bit more comfortable with the competition than he did last year, right? And some of that's probably the competition, some of that's probably growth between the offseason, but he looks like he's ready for the moment. And that does go back to the fact that he's had to compete for the starting position at every level.
Okay, and we've got other texts we're going to talk about, but I want to get in. I'm going to ask your opinion, then I'm going to go to some text. Zamir White, what has stood out with you with Zamir?
A little bit similar to Aiden. He seems a little bit more talkative this year. He seems like he's just ready to go prove on a longer scale in terms of a full season, that he's the guy, or that he can be the guy or the main guy, right? I don't think Zeus really cares about being the primary running back, but I do think he wants to show that he can be the main primary back. So I've seen some pop from him. He looks ready. He looks like he's been in the weight room, like he always is in the weight room. And he looks like he's excited, right? That's the vibe that I get from Zamir.
I remember one time you and I standing next to each other in the locker room, and I walked away and I said to you, that guy has muscles in places I've not seen in my body in my entire life. He is just granite, isn't he?
He's stacked. He really is. He's a specimen, man. You can tell he's a gym rat for sure.
All right, now let me tell you, here's a text I got on Zamir. Zamir seems comfy. I like that word, comfy, which I responded, can you please explain? This is what the person said. I don't think he liked being in the shadows of Josh, but I think he respected him and waited his turn. He's walking around like, I know something you don't. And I think it's, he knows Christmas Day was not a farce.
Listen, Hondo, you know how I feel about Zamir White, and I would completely agree with that, right? It's one of those, like, he knows that he knows he's the guy, or at the very least, he knows that he has the potential. Now, I will say this, just as, you know, I've spoken to Zamir a decent amount and just kind of been around him a decent amount, I don't think he necessarily had a problem with being behind Josh, specifically. I think that he just wanted to show what he can do, right? I don't think it had really much to do with Josh, but I think it more so had to do with him saying, hey, I know that I can make it here, right? And he had been on the bench in special teams for what, 2 to 3 seasons. It was just his time. And I think that's what he was feeling. But I never really got the feeling that he disliked being behind Josh necessarily, outside of just being a competitor. But outside of that, I thought those two were very close.
Yeah, and that's why this person was making it clear.
Yeah.
All right, next. Too many people make too much out of OTAs and mini camps because you have to judge the things. Football's played in pads, so it doesn't matter how many guys have you. Remember last year we talked about players. Ooh, they're looking good,
Yeah.
and we were like, why is that person writing that? The pads aren't on.
Yeah.
But I want to get to something that I thought was fascinating, and I'm going to read you a text. Okay. This is what sticks out to me. I think training camp is going to be nothing like people suspect. I think this offense is considerably better. And I think the defense is as well. Not as much as the offense. There wasn't as much to improve. I think there's going to be times when the offense in camp looks okay, but not great because of the defense they're playing against.
Yes.
I would give one word of caution, Hondo. I wouldn't read too much into the offense in camp. This defense is going to be badass.
Uh,
Thoughts?
excuse this dumb smile on my face, but I couldn't agree more. In terms of where the defense is, they're returning most of their starters from last year. You plug in Christian Wilkins. He's gonna be a huge difference maker. Let me just say that right now. I think he's gonna be worth every dollar, not even necessarily because of what he can particularly do, but what he's gonna do for the defense and the other people around him. I think people are going to be excited about that. That's one. Two, I think in terms of the offense and competing against the defense, one, I've always felt like, and maybe you can, let me know if I'm wrong, but I felt like early in the offseason, whenever the teams are at this point, the defense usually kind of gets to it a little bit faster, kind of picks up things a little bit faster than the offense on a little bit. Now the Raiders have a defense that's returning most of the people from last year, and then you have a new offense being implemented. So I do think in training camp and OTAs, the offense might seem a little bit off or a little bit shaky, but again, new offensive coordinator, new offense being put in. The defense is great, so they're going to make the offense look a little shaky at times, but the offense is going to be better because of it. So I think that text was very accurate.
Usually in the non-padded part, the offense looks better.
Okay.
And the reason why is because defensive lineman can get to the quarterback. It would have been a sack, but he still steps up and throws the ball because they can't touch him.
Yeah.
So, and then usually in training camp, once pads come on, the defense looks better early. That's the usual trend. All right.
Yes, sir.
So this is, and I'll tell you off air who. This is the next one. This is my question. Anything stand out to you early? Answer. Getsy, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. My response, why? Theirs. These guys bought into him. They love him. He's an aw shucks country boy. At least that's how he comes off. But these guys love him. He's listening. They like him. He's going to have an impact. Thoughts on that? I thought that was interesting.
So again, you and I were sitting in the media room, and as soon as he came, or when he got done talking, I looked at you and I said, I kind of gave you that look, like, yes, right. It reverberates around the room. Like, you can tell he walks in, he talks, and those guys are coming from an offense last year that wasn't necessarily the most complex or the most diverse offense, and Getsy's already kind of turning that around. And I think the guys immediately picked up on that. And I also think the guys realize that, hey, if you just do what you're told, everybody's going to get some, right? Everybody's going to get their passes. Everybody's going to get their targets and their catches. And I think they see that, right? And they're just feeling the excitement of having something completely different offensively this year than what they had last year. And I think that has the guys excited.
All right. Now, I got to get into this one because I think this is interesting. I was told by my organization that they walked by, and I don't know if it was a classroom, if it was Getsy's office. I don't know what it was. And they talked about Getsy sitting there with a ton of players around him just holding court. And they weren't even talking about football. They were just talking about life. And there was so much laughter. And they go, they told me, I walked by to see what was going on. I thought it was just a bunch of players joking around. And here's Getsy and surrounded by players, and they're all telling stories and laughing and joking. And they go, man, that's invaluable. I think one thing has really stood out to me, and I've talked about it on previous podcasts, but I want your input. One thing has really stood out to me is listening to players talk about the staff. Last year, there were a lot of staff members guys liked. There were some they didn't. They're gone. But there was a lot of guys that they liked. You don't hear anything about any staff member that's not liked. These staff, and it's almost as if AP, and I'm going to ask them, did you coach your staff on how you want them to be? Because the talk is they're more personable. They know us on a personal level. It seems like they genuinely care about us as people. I'm going to ask, did you coach that in your staff? Or did you hire guys who have that familiarity? Or is it just natural? I mean, I have been surprised by that. Have you been?
So yes and no. I'm not necessarily surprised because of how much experience all of the coaches that AP brought around them have. So I think to a certain degree, a lot of that, it just comes with so much time of being around the NFL. And a lot of those guys are former players or former coaches, again, around the NFL. So I think that just I think I think he may have coached them a little bit on it, but I think he just hired the right people, right? And I think he may have said one or two things like, hey, guys, this is what the case was last year early on. Let's make sure we're not doing that again this year. But I think for the most part, it's natural. And you're right. There are no negative vibes in the room anymore or in the organization anymore. I don't feel it. I don't see it. And I think that's because of, again, the experience that those coaches bring with them.
I'm going to ask you a question from a different angle. AP had relationships at every position group on the team when he was a linebacker coach. And I'm going to ask him about this next week, but he has been a head coach, a big brother, counselor, a mentor. He has taken this entire team, wrapped them around him, and he's talked to guys about being dads. He's talked to guys about being husbands. Rich Bisaccia was that way. How impressed are you with the way AP, and you and I see it every day, how impressed are you with just how AP has consumed and made this his team? I mean, no disrespect to Mark Davis, no disrespect to Tom Telesco. This is AP's baby, and he is that. And you heard me, I asked him at the owners' meeting, you are the guardian of the gate of that locker room. And how shocked are you? Because I'm telling you, players are stunned at he knew everybody before Josh was fired, but even they're stunned with an offseason, the role he has taken. Are you surprised? I'm a little surprised because he's a young coach.
So I'm a little bit surprised, but I'm also not, and I'll tell you why. And it's literally from the very first press conference when AP was introduced, you can see that he was taking complete ownership. You can hear and feel that he was going to take complete ownership of it. And the one thing about AP that's I've noticed the most is that even when he took control of it, he's never come in, he's never promised wins and losses. That's never what he promised. He's always promised that he was going to get the most that he possibly could out of that team. And this is how you do it, right? It's not always about football, right? These guys live, breathe, sleep football, right? You got to be able, especially as a head coach, you have to be able to connect with these guys on something different, right, than football. AP already has the football side with those guys. He's already got the respect with them there. But his ability to connect with them outside of football, I think it just helps them in the football realm because they know that he has their best interest at heart.
One of the player, well, that's okay. One of the members of the organization told me that there was a moment when they watched AP go up and give his son a big hug. And he talked about how his dad had never hugged him. And he said, I just respected him for here he is at the football field. He's one of 32, and he still found time to be dad in the midst of all of it. I think what's one of the things is that it's not just that guys like AP, they respect him. I like a lot of people, including you. I also respect you. And you and I have been able to have some serious conversations. And I've always said to you, do you feel heard? Have I not done that to you?
Yes,
And
sir.
asked you, do you feel like I heard you? Because when you respect people, you can disagree. I always laugh when people say, oh, I didn't get, well, having an argument doesn't mean you don't respect people. That means you're doing life with them.
Agreed.
But I agree with this person, and I thought it was fascinating. They don't just like him, they respect him. What do you think of that analogy? I thought that was fascinating.
No, I think it's fair. Because again, not only does he know what they're going through on the field, he knows what they're going through off the field, right? These guys already have a ton of things going on football wise, but a lot of people forget that these guys are dads, husbands, brothers. They have things outside of football that they also have to carry at the same time as learning a new offense, right? Or learning a new defense or learning whatever they have to learn. And that's a lot, right? And very few people can identify with that. With none of us really have an idea of what that's like, right? And then you got oh, you missed a play and everybody's on social media. There's so many different facets that go into this that only a former player who's done this at a high level like AP would understand. So I think that does go a long way in terms of their respect for him.
Yeah, I thought, man, you never know who you're influencing, do you? I mean, you and I are dads, we love being dads. So I'm constantly hugging and loving on my kids, even the adult ones. And so and my dad was that way. So for me, I wouldn't have even noticed it. And I'll be frank, I didn't notice it because to me that's natural living. But if you're somebody that never had that,
It's different.
that's you never know who you're influencing, do you?
No, not at all. That's very, very true.
All right, here we go. Offensively, what has been the biggest surprise so far through the offseason, the OTAs?
For me, the biggest surprise, and I kind of mentioned it before, but just how much I believe Trey Tucker, how good he looks just in his second year, right? And I'll also say Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, just how well they've been working together. And specifically, I will say this: I feel like Aiden has been taking a little bit more chances. He's been trusting himself a little bit more in terms of the throws he's making, the types of throws that he's even attempting. He's been trusting himself a little bit more, and that's one thing that stood out to me.
All right, defensively, what's been the biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise for me defensively is going to be it's going to sound like crazy, but Christian Wilkins. Obviously I knew he was going to be good. We all knew he was going to be good, but my God. I listen, they're all not even in pads yet, and you can already like he has to go like they're already not even going full speed. Christian has to slow down even more because that's how dominant he can be. I just didn't know. I'm sorry, and I'm excited to see him in full pads going to full goal. I asked Gardner Minshew yesterday. I said, "Hey, who stood out to you the most?" And he said the same thing. He was like Christian Wilkins. Like it's been crazy to watch.
I am so, as a football fan, not, I mean, you're the Raider fan. I'm just a football fan. As a football fan, I love to watch the guy play.
Yeah,
I can't wait to watch him on a line with Max Crosby.
it's
With
gonna be fun.
and all right. Thirdly, anything stand out to you with special teams? Because one thing stood out to me. I'd love to hear what stood out to you.
Really just, I mean, not much to be honest with you. I did see Carlson kicking a little bit yesterday. I would say more so than anything, just watching how they kind of learn the new rules and prepare for the new rules. But that's what I would point out for special teams.
So here's what stands out with me in special teams: the excitement of the players for the new rules. That shocked me.
So
But
this
they
is what I
genuinely seem excited about it.
Yeah, so I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for other guys who may not have had those opportunities before. And if the rule sticks around, it can be huge in terms of players that are making the team and getting more playing time and potentially getting more money. It could be a game changer for a lot of players. So I think that's the excitement you feel, is because they realize, hey, I may not have been the guy that was sprinting 60 yards down the field, but guess what? Now I don't have to sprint 60 yards down the field. That changes the game for a lot of people.
All right, now Zeke and I will be at mandatory mini camp next week. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's going to be great. Of course, we'll continue podcasts every single day. Him and I will do a podcast together from the team facility, but it's going to be a great week for football next week. Zeke, thank you for the OTA report. You know how much respect I have for you. Give my best to Jazz, would you, bud?
Yes, sir, will do. Thank you again.
All right, everybody. Now, Zeke, tell them where to find you on social media.
Yes, on X slash Twitter, EZTREZ_SI. So EZTREZ_SI.
Now, one other thing I want to tell you, everybody, is we're producing 10 or more pieces of content on the Raiders every day. There is nobody. Zeke, does anybody even remotely write as much as we do? It's not even close, is it?
I'm not sure it's possible, to be honest with you.
Okay. And we're 100% free.
Yeah.
And the reason we're able to bring you so much coverage of your beloved Raiders for 100% free is because you like, you read, you watch, you subscribe, and you share. So please keep doing that so we can keep it free and keep adding staff and keep adding and adding and adding and bringing you more and more coverage of your beloved team. You can find me on IG when you go to @HondoSR, on X, formerly known as Twitter, when you go to @Hondo Carpenter. And again, si.com/NFL/Raiders.